Hello and welcome to the MBOM podcast, where you'll learn to master the business of yoga. MBOM is a proud part of the Wander Barn Podcast Network, and I'm your host, Amanda Kingsmith. I'm a 500-hour registered yoga teacher, a yoga business coach, and a total business geek. Here at MBOM, you'll learn everything you need to know to create a sustainable yoga business by learning from myself and guests from around the world about how they built their yoga businesses, and about how you too can become a successful yoga teacher, studio owner, and much more. All right, let's dive in. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Mastering the Business of Yoga. I am grateful and excited that you're joining me for today's episode of the show. And this week on the podcast, I am joined by Eddie Arpin. Eddie has been helping people achieve their goals through technology for over 15 years, and he's currently helping thousands of wellness and fitness business owners as a co-founder of OfferingTree. And over the years, I've had a number of different members of the OfferingTree team, and especially the founding team, on the podcast, but I've never actually had Eddie on the podcast. So it was really fun to have him on the show and highlight his involvement with OfferingTree, his experience, and so much more. For those of you who aren't familiar with OfferingTree, it is an all-in-one software platform that takes the headache out of running your business. And Eddie really loves to help people who are new to OfferingTree solve their tech problems and set them up for success so they can focus on growing professionally and helping their students and clients. And in this episode, Eddie shares the journey of creating OfferingTree and what it's been like to build a software company over the years. We also talk about why it's important for yoga teachers to have a comprehensive and functional software, whether that's OfferingTree or another one. And we just talk a little bit about how software can really help you not have to do all the day-to-day admin stuff, the headachy stuff that can take so much time, and just really focus on your zone of genius, which I'm assuming is teaching. We also talk about how OfferingTree is supporting yoga teachers and wellness entrepreneurs, business lessons that Eddie's learned through his career, and so much more. So this episode is jam-packed with goodness, and I hope that you guys really enjoy it. Before we dive in, I just want to give you guys a quick reminder that my book, How to Master the Business of Yoga, is live, ready for purchase. So if you guys want to check it out, head on over to mbomyoga.com/book. If you guys get a copy, if you're enjoying it, if you're working through the various exercises and stuff like that, I would love to hear how you're doing. So feel free to send me an email or send me a photo or an update on social media. As always, thank you so much for the support. And without further ado, let's get into the episode. Here's Eddie. Welcome to the podcast today, Eddie. I'm really excited to have you here with me today.
Thanks. Excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like this has been like a long time coming because I've had other OfferingTree like co-founders, staff on the show, but you've never actually been on the podcast before.
Wow. All right. Well, it's due time.
Yeah, due time, because we've known each other for a while now. Like I feel like it's been a good 4 or so years that we've been connected. So maybe we can kick things off for people who don't know you. Just introduce yourself, tell listeners a little bit about what you do, who you are, all that good stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. So I am one of the founders and CEO of OfferingTree. I'm sure we'll dig into OfferingTree, and OfferingTree has been a proud sponsor of your podcast for a number of years, as we just mentioned. But yeah, we are a little bit of a smaller company. We're not one of those big tech companies that you might think of when you think of Google, Amazon, Facebook. Obviously, we're much smaller than even some of the other players in the industry. What that means is for the founding team is we have our hands in a lot of pots. So I mean, I do everything from some product development, some software development, to customer support, and some marketing things. And so it's cool. It's a cool experience for the founding team because we get to be so intimate with every part of the business, and we like it that way. I mean, we purposely took this path of being small because we wanted to have that. We wanted to have that intimacy with every part of the business and kind of know how our customers are doing, how they're feeling, what they're talking about in support, where the pain points are, where they're getting a lot of value from. And I think it's really benefited us to, when we think about what do we want to do going forward? What kind of strategies do we want to have? Yeah, I mean, it's been a great experience so far, and it's been great. And I'd say outside of OfferingTree, I mean, I'm a active person. I really like to. I still play an adult league basketball league with a bunch of guys. I love to do like workouts and meditation and yoga. So um, serving this industry has been like a joy for me personally as well.
Yeah, no, that's awesome to hear. And I think it's cool to just hear from like the perspective of a CEO from like a small business. Cause I think sometimes people have this idea of like what CEO is. And it's like, okay, you're like top dog. It's like you make the decisions, you like funnel things down, you delegate. And I'm sure you get to do all of that. But it's like also being the CEO of a small company is like you have your hands in all the pots, like you said, like doing customer service and customer success, like helping your customers with what they need. And I feel like, yeah, it's just like really cool to hear that and just kind of puts like a different perspective on CEO.
Yeah, I know. I remember before I was an entrepreneur myself, just like wondering, like, what do these CEOs do? And obviously it's different for every company. And like, like we're talking about a small company. What I do is very different than what, like a Mark Zuckerberg does or something like that. So, as you get bigger, you just don't have time to do, all the things that you did when you were really small. But yeah, it's been a great experience so far.
Yeah, that's awesome. And one of the things I'd love to hear is a little bit around the origin story with OfferingTree. Like, where did the idea come from? Why did you guys decide like wellness yoga industry?
Yeah, my co-founder Alex and I were college friends, and I think Alex was on the show at one point.
Yeah. Yeah. Alex has been on the show.
Yeah. So anyway, he was a assistant manager at a yoga studio, and I'm based in Minnesota. So is he. And so he was managing this yoga studio in Northeast Minneapolis, and they were having all kinds of like they were just doing pen and paper. They were a donation based, independent, single location studio. And so they were just like tracking everything on pen and paper, actually. And then they tried to bring on Mind Body Online, and it just wasn't working for them because of just the way they ran their business. I think being a donation based yoga studio was pretty different. And the system just couldn't handle it. So I'm a software developer. I kind of forgot to mention that in my intro, but like that's what, I did before OfferingTree. And so he called me up and said, "Hey, can you just develop a system for my small independent donation based yoga studio?" And I said, "Well, you guys have like $500,000." And he was like, "No." Because developing something would be like a big project just to do it for one studio. So anyway, we got to thinking like, well, but maybe, if there's nothing out there, if you're looking at other solutions out there and there's nothing there, maybe there's a business opportunity. So we ended up looking at the space and spent a lot of time doing like interviews with studio owners and yoga teachers. And it was kind of interesting. What we found was that like I was talking to yoga teachers, we saw like how much they were like struggling to make a living, having to teach so many classes. And the people that we saw that were thriving were teaching at studios, but they were also having like private clients and their own kind of side things going on. And so looking at them, we were thinking like, geez, these people really need a system so that they can stay organized. They can like have their own business represented online, being able to take payments online, being able to book people, and be a little bit more organized rather than just doing everything on pen and paper. So that's where we started, actually. And we launched, and we were getting mostly just single yoga teachers versus yoga studios. And then the pandemic hit, and all the studios shut down, and all the teachers wanted to keep teaching, and all the students really wanted to continue their yoga practice. So that's where like OfferingTree really was able to step in and help all these yoga teachers. We quickly pivoted to add a Zoom integration. And it was really cool to see how the yoga industry pivoted during COVID and kept providing their service to their clients. It was pretty amazing to watch that and to be a part of that. So, that was kind of a catalyst moment for OfferingTree, and where a lot of people were like, well, maybe I don't need a website. Maybe I don't need all these tools. After the pandemic, it was like, okay, we need to have something that's something that can be accessible online, where even if we're doing in-person things, people can still, find out about me or book classes, book appointments. And, that was kind of a pivotal time for us. And we've been growing ever since. And, we started servicing yoga studios and Pilates studios and other boutique fitness studios about a year ago, and we've been adding more and more ever since. And that's been also like a really good experience to learn more about the studio needs and provide a good solution for them.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. It's just taking me back to like when we first connected and, kind of hearing about OfferingTree and stuff. And I feel like, I mean, it was the same platform, but also like not, right? Because you guys do so much more now. It's like so much more comprehensive. But I remember when I started working with studios, back in like, I guess 2015, 2016, it's like, Mind Body Online was kind of like the main software that was out there. And I think at the time, maybe it was like $100 a month, something like that. And as I started working more and more with yoga teachers, they'd be like, well, I need a software. Like, what do you recommend? And I'm like, the only one I know of is Mind Body Online. But if you're just like an individual yoga teacher, it's like, you don't need to spend $100 on software every month. Like it's a lot, especially if you're just teaching part-time or something like that. And yeah, when OfferingTree came along, I was like, this is like what teachers need, right? Like they need something that's simple. They need something that encompasses everything. Cause the other thing was like, sure, they could have like Acuity, and then they could have like Squarespace, and they can have MailChimp. Like they can have all these things, but at some point it's like you got to pay for them. And then those payments are adding up as well. So it's like you end up spending $100 a month anyways between all your stuff. And it's been really cool to see how OfferingTree's been able to like fit the needs and meet the needs for individual yoga teachers, over the years. And I think you guys were one of the first companies that I saw doing Zoom integration when the pandemic hit. And I think it's one of the benefits about being a small company, right? Like you have the capacity to be like, you need this, like we can do this pretty quickly versus maybe a bigger company that's like, got all these people, they have to all meet and agree and talk about it and, all the things. You think, oh, they have more resources, it'll be easier. But I think when you have like more cooks in the kitchen, it can also be harder to execute those types of things. And then I know not to hate on Mind Body because I think they have a place in the industry as well. But I feel like when they launched like video on demand and recordings and stuff, it was like insanely expensive, especially for these studios and these teachers who are losing jobs and losing students and, charging less for classes. It's like what they needed was not to pay more during that time. They needed functional software that could support them through the change. And I think it was really cool to see OfferingTree step up and be that software.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it was an amazing time, and, it was really hard for the industry. But it was so cool to see, how people were able to pivot and continue going. And yeah, just to say again, it was fun to be a part of that and help where we could. But yeah, Mind Body, they actually used to have a personal plan that was cheaper, and they got rid of it. And that was even before COVID. So that was kind of when we thought like, okay, it was a little bit scary because it's like, what do they know that we don't? Like they're trying to, they decided not to go into this space, but we're like, we want to go into it. And we think that there's a need here. And so, it's been great. I'm glad we did.
Yeah. I'm curious on that note, like what it's been like building a software company. Like I'm imagining that there's been some like, you start doing this without like a lot of funding, you probably have to keep like another job on the side to make sure you get paid while you're trying to build this thing. Like, these things can look really glamorous once you sort of quote unquote made it. But I'm curious what those like, what it's been like actually like building this and, making a name for yourself in the industry.
Yeah. I mean, it's been great. It's been a total mix of emotions and, ups and downs, and just like, I'm sure every, yoga teacher has experienced, or every yoga studio manager has experienced, going into quote unquote business. It's tough. But it's also really rewarding when it works out. And, we've had a lot of fun. We did, as you mentioned, we decided, not to take big funding. We didn't do venture funding. So we bootstrapped it, and we worked, the founding team worked nights and weekends. We kept our day jobs. We got it to market, and we rolled through the pandemic. And then, as we grew, like we slowly started to add some of the founders full time. So it was a long process, but it was very rewarding along the way. And it was kind of fun to grow more slowly because we could take our time and make sure that, we were folding in what we were seeing in the product to future updates, and we weren't trying to grow too fast. And it never really compromised like the customer support we were able to have with our customers as we grew because of just the way we grew, more slow and steady. So that was great. I mean, even today, our customers still get responses from me and Alec and Arvin, some of the founders on the team. There's been so many great moments, so many milestones along the way, so many good learnings. And then, obviously like so many scary moments where things would go wrong and you're worried or you're really frustrated. But really, like when you look at kind of OfferingTree's growth, it's just been amazing how kind of slow and steady, but positive it's been. So, with all like sort of the chaos and ups and downs along the way, when you reflect back on it, I was so thankful for all of the teachers and all of our customers who supported us along the way and gave us encouragement and helped provide feedback too. Like we often like to connect with our customers and do interviews and things like that, ask them how things are going, what's not going well, and learn from them. And definitely we couldn't be where we are today without them and their participation. We like to kind of think of ourselves as having like a relationship with our customers and not having it be like a one-way street, where we just like put out product and they use it or not. So we want to have a relationship with our customers. And I feel very fortunate to be in this market because it seems like people are so grateful and willing to help out. So it's been a wild ride, and we're totally looking forward to the future and seeing what's next.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that's awesome to hear. And I think it's nice to just like, I appreciate you like keeping it real, because I'm sure there's been like like those amazing moments where you're like, oh, we've made it, we're doing amazing. And then those moments where like, oh my God, like, can we keep doing this? And I think it's amazing that you guys have been able to grow while like keeping true to your values and, kind of remaining like keeping the business that you originally created. And I think this is one of the hardest things as businesses grow, is I think a lot of times they lose kind of like the heart of who and what they are because they, grow so fast, or they take VC funding and then, there's other people coming in and suggesting different things. And while I don't necessarily think there's like a right or wrong way to do things, I think it's cool that you guys decided to go like the bootstrap way and just do it yourselves and do it slowly. And I think you can see that, like my experience as, I guess, like a customer with OfferingTree has been like, I can see that, I've used plenty of software, in my time. And I feel like being able to get a response from a real human and not just be like pushed through by like a robot chat service is like something I really value these days, because I feel like everything's just like AI and chatbots and stuff now. Sometimes I'm just like, need my yoga to not yell at the phone or the computer,
Yeah, absolutely. It can be a tough balance for business owners. And, we've certainly like added customer support reps along the way. So, we're not the only ones doing it, for sure. But, we still like to keep our hands in the mix just to have a finger on the pulse of what's going on.
Yeah, no, I love that. I think that that's great. And I feel like one thing I've always liked about OfferingTree is that you guys are responsive to, the needs of the industry, the needs of teachers. I feel like it's one of the best ways to run a business, and especially a software business, is like, actually thinking about what people need and responding to that to the best of your ability. I was actually talking with a client yesterday. She doesn't run a software business, but just a teacher. And she was telling me like, oh, I've got all these offerings going and, some of them are working, some of them aren't. And I'm like, well, are your people asking for these things? And she was like, no, I'm just putting them out there. And I was like, well, it's really important to respond to the needs of the people that are kind of in your sphere of influence. And if they're not asking for something, and then they're not signing up, like they probably don't need it. Like it's best to kind of respond to what people actually need. And that's where you're going to fill programs and stuff. And I feel like you can kind of apply that to software too. It's like your people will tell you what they need, right? Like they'll tell you exactly what they need out of the software to make it better. And I think the job is just to kind of listen and execute.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you have to kind of start somewhere and throw something out there. But once you have some people using, either like if they're signing up for your classes or they're signing up for your software, now that you have some people, you can really sort of like create a relationship with them, and there's things that you can do to try to glean some information about like what do they like? What do they don't like? What else do they want? Even like a email list is a great way of doing that, like polls and surveys and, what else are you looking for? Like people are usually willing to let you know what they want. And if they think that you're in a position to help them, I think, that's what everybody's looking for is like some help for some of the problems that they're having. So, I think being open to asking and receiving input is, an important thing for any yoga teacher, yoga studio owner, or software business owner. So, it's kind of funny to see like how all the different tie-ins to like how just running a business is the same no matter who you are or what you're doing.
Yeah, totally. It's like same, but different, right? But I feel like it's like the major learnings and takeaways can be applied to like so many different aspects of business and different businesses.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 100%.
I love that. And I'm curious, you mentioned that you guys recently got into the studio side of things, which I think is really cool. Can you tell us or tell me a little bit more about like the studio side of software and, just kind of like, I guess, what OfferingTree offers with that? Like, how are you guys kind of competing with some of the other big players in the industry for studio software?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, the software is mostly the same. So, if you're a yoga teacher, a yoga studio, I'd say 80% of the software is the same. We add some extra functionality for studios, like the ability to manage staff, adding in like other teachers, giving them like different permission levels to access parts of the software, being able to like assign, a class to a teacher, being able to like have some reports about like, how are teachers doing, how are different classes doing, some payroll reporting and things like that. So, how much to pay your teachers. And we support like, a few different types of ways that, compensation for teachers. I think like who we're really focusing on right now are those independent studios with one or two or three locations, who just want something like simple and not something that's not going to break the bank. And something that's simple for like their clients to use and for them to use. And so that's really been like where we're focusing and, who we're trying to serve in the industry right now. And, it's been great. I mean, it feels like not like you're totally starting over, but, just like learning from all of your customers and learning what they need. That's a little bit different from the individual yoga teacher. It's been a fun experience and it feels like kind of like rewinding the clock a few years and going back to those earlier days. And, not to say that we're like done learning from the individuals. Like I think we still have plenty of plans for how to improve the platform. But it's been fun to like have those initial conversations with studio owners.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. And I'm curious for like studio owners, because I know like a lot of OfferingTree was kind of in at least how you guys have started and evolved is like, we've got like a website for people and then they can build out like their schedule and their class packs and they don't necessarily have to use your website software. They can integrate that into something else. How is it working for the studio side of things? Like if they're brand new starting out, can they build their website and do all of that? Or if they already have that, can they use the software as well? Like how is that working?
Yeah, it's pretty much the same. So like if they're we've had it both ways where like they're a new studio working out or starting out and they want to use OfferingTree to build their website. We've definitely done that for folks. And then for the folks who already have their website, we have widgets and things that we can embed the scheduling and membership user interface into their existing website. So, clients can go ahead and register for classes and buy memberships and packages right from their like WordPress or Wix or Squarespace websites as well. It really works both ways, just like it does for the individual yoga teachers. And, we've had studios use our website or bring their own with them. So either way works for us.
Nice. That's awesome. That's really cool to hear. I think it's so interesting because I feel like, the evolution of studios and studio software has been really interesting to watch over the last, like, let's say like 5-ish years. Cause I feel like, Mind Body Online was working so functionally for people. And then I don't know, I feel like they just like didn't deliver during the pandemic is kind of the vibe I'm getting. And so many studios that I know of have changed softwares like since the pandemic. I think it was just needing like something more comprehensive with online and video on demand and just feeling like, Mind Body Online was just like not meeting their needs for a price that was reasonable, especially given shutdowns and losing students and having to adapt and stuff like that. And I feel like you guys launched at like such a good time to be able to meet the needs of these people. Cause sometimes we think of studios, like maybe think of like Core Power, for example, it's huge in the US. It's like, that's not just what yoga studios are. Like there's so many just like little boutique studios, and they have needs with software too. And their needs are very different from what just an individual teacher needs, but it's also not what like Core Power needs. Like they need like a machine to like run all their locations, right? Like they have, thousands of students and hundreds of teachers and stuff. And that's very different from just like your little mom and pop local yoga studio. So I think it's cool that you guys were able to like step in and serve that community.
Right. Yeah. Actually more than half or most of the yoga studios are more of the solo independent studios. So, yeah, and exactly right. I mean, so many studios are paying for stuff that they really don't need. And it's not even only just the cost of it, but just the complexity of it as well. It's so many features or functions that they don't need, and it's just making it hard to like set up. Because softwares like MindBody are made for not just like yoga studios or fitness studios. They're made for like spas and salons and things like that. So there's a lot of like stuff that is extra that just like a yoga studio doesn't need.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's actually really interesting. I have a client that I'm working with right now, an individual yoga teacher, and she teaches yoga therapy. And so she's been working out of like a chiropractic clinic. And so they use different software. I think they're using like the Jane app software, which I've seen at a number of different like chiropractic kind of massage, naturopathy, naturopathy places and stuff like that. And she was just saying how she's like, it's a great software. There's nothing wrong with it. She's like, but I just feel like it doesn't like work for exactly what I need for like offering yoga therapy. And it's so interesting to start thinking about the different needs for each industry and like type of practice that you run. And I think sometimes like bigger softwares are trying to like kind of meet the needs of like people more generally. Like that's what I kind of think about with like Wix and Squarespace, for example, and particularly Wix. And I feel like so like more often than not, it just like doesn't meet the needs of people because it's like trying to be too general.
Right. Yeah. If you want to have like a huge market to be a huge company, you kind of need to do that. We sort of picked our niche and picked health and wellness, and we're not trying to be everything to everybody.
Yeah, which is like, I think this is one of the things that I learned early on in my yoga business is like, you can't be everything for everyone. And if you're trying to target everybody, you're really targeting no one. And I mean, Wix is like insanely successful. So obviously they've done something great, like not hating on them at all. They're a great platform, but I do think that there's a lot of value in kind of being able to like know exactly who your people are and really serve them on like at a deeper level. I think that that's really, really great. And, again, like a good general business tip for anyone who's listening, like this is the power of niching, right? Like it's few and far between that these like generalists kind of make it, right? Like we know of a couple of them, but not a ton of them. There's more of these, like we serve specific types of industries and we do that really well is kind of how I feel like you can just do things better.
Yeah, 100%. Like prenatal yoga, something like that, where you're just like niching into a specific market and, you can communicate your value better to that market. You're speaking more directly to people, who fit that market. So there's a lot of advantages. I mean, obviously the disadvantage is you have a more limited market and your overall opportunity might not be bigger, but the ability to like really resonate, can be much more powerful, and like you can like grow faster almost in that niche. So yeah, it's another tie-in between, just a general business.
Yeah. And also running a software company for sure. I'm curious kind of on like a more like general basic level, like why do you feel like, and maybe what have you seen, like how it's important for yoga teachers and maybe studios, but specifically those individual people, like why is it important for them to have a comprehensive functional software? Like, I guess I kind of think about the origin story, thinking about Alex's studio, like there's nothing wrong per se of doing like pen and paper. But I feel like software can just make things so much easier. So I'm curious, like how you guys have seen having a great software, like really benefiting people in their businesses.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And totally. I mean, like you can do almost anything and still make it work. It's just, at some point, do you want to just do yourself a favor and pay a little bit of money to buy back your time, right? And so like, it's hard being a business owner. It's one of those things that, like, I'll say just generally, being a business owner, I think one of the hardest things about it is the fact that you can be doing almost anything. There's no shortage of like things to do, but it's like, what do you want to be doing and what is the best use of your time to achieve your goals in your business? So collecting payments via Venmo and then sending Zoom links via email is like maybe not a good use of your time. And if you're really trying to build your clientele and like you're serious about being a yoga teacher, not like in a sense of like you want to grow your clientele, not the sense that like you can be a very serious, not saying you can't be a serious yoga teacher and only teach 5 students, like that's totally fine. Maybe you don't need a software at that point, but if you are trying to like grow your lists and you're trying to like figure out a way to scale your business a little bit, you don't want to be spending a lot of your time like doing menial tasks where you could spend like $26 a month and offload a lot of that information or a lot of those tasks and buy back like hours of your time a week so that you can be spending more time figuring out ways to get more students or retaining the ones that you have or bettering your programs or tuning your offerings. Like, I think it's really important to have that realization and know, like, value your time and really kind of focus on like where you should be spending your time in your business or your venture or your practice. I think that's like one of the most important things that I've like taken away from being a business owner.
Yeah, I think like figuring out what your zone of genius is and then seeing how you can like offload the other stuff. And I know this is so hard when you're starting out, and especially if you're like a solopreneur, but I think there's like little ways we can do this, like with software, for example. And it's kind of amazing, like when you start identifying the low hanging fruit that maybe you could streamline or offload. Like, this isn't software necessarily, but when I decided to hire somebody part-time and I started budgeting for it, I was like, okay, I could do like 5 hours a week. And I feel like there was a part of my brain that was like, 5 hours a week is basically nothing. Like, is that going to be that helpful for me? But 5 hours a week is like actually a lot, like being able to get 5 hours of my week back to focus on other things was like, oh, I can put that into like growth of my business. So instead of just being like, running on this like hamster wheel constantly and just doing like all the things to just keep going, now I can give these things to somebody else who can take care of them. And that means I can like take on more clients that bring in money, or I can work on other aspects that bring in money into my business. And, I think it's just an interesting perspective to kind of have. And I think that software can be the same thing, like thinking of it as an investment for yourself. Like, if what you're spending your time doing is, creating Zoom links for your classes, emailing them out to the people, contacting people to get payment and confirming if they're coming to classes, and then making sure they've got the Zoom link, sending just like BCC emails to everyone. It's like, there's software that can take care of all of that. Like, that could save you, depending on how many classes you're teaching, like hours and hours in your week. And then it's like, what could you spend that time doing? Like taking more classes on, taking more students on, offering privates, building out workshops, I don't know, practicing yoga, hanging out with your kids, whatever it is for yourself. And I feel like it's just for such like a low amount per month. I feel like it's like really worth it to kind of invest in that.
Totally. Yeah. And just another like sort of nuance that too is like, if, you saying hiring someone was saving you 5 hours a week, and it depends like how those 5 hours are broken up over the week. Like, if it's just like, I could do this 5 hours in one chunk, that's one thing. But like, when those 5 hours are spread out over like little 10-minute tasks over the entire week, it really bogs you down, because context switching and switching tasks is it's so more than just like that 10 minutes of work. It's like you were working on something and now you have to switch and pound someone for a payment, or send out a Zoom link, or send out an email. And it really kind of takes away from your flow. And those are like the tasks that, as a business owner, I despise. And like, it's just like, it's so distracting. And it can be really tough to have like quality time, really. So yeah, I mean, that's the beauty of software, is it can help with those things. And also, I mean, other than just like saving time, there's ways of like being able to offer things that you wouldn't be able to normally offer. We have an online store, so you can do on demand offerings like either videos or courses and things like that. That can be a new revenue stream that maybe isn't possible without something like a software to be able to do that for you, and a website that's able to deliver that. So, there's other reasons too, but I think especially when you're smaller and you're trying to grow, is how can you buy back some of your time smartly with good return on investment, where you can like really work on making your business work for you. Because when you're just starting, you're kind of figuring out like, is this going to work for me, is this not? And it takes time, for sure, and it's not easy, and sometimes it's hard to part with even $26 a month when you're not making much. But I think it's important to be spending time in the right places to make that time period as short as possible, so you can be in a better place as soon as possible.
Yeah, no, 100%. I completely agree with that. And yeah, I mean, even when I started my podcast, I like didn't have like a booking software. And so it was like back and forth, like the amount of admin to just like book a podcast interview was so much back and forth that I was doing entirely myself. And then things like once it was finally booked, like sending out, a calendar invite with the Zoom link. And then I needed to get like photos and a bio from the person and find out if they wanted questions. And now it's like all that's done through a software. And, do people need to book outside of the times on my calendar sometimes? Certainly, yes. And like, it's always something that I let people know, but it's like, actually having that was like a game changer for me. And actually one of the studio owners that I was working with up until earlier this year, she has like a private practice outside of her, like she runs a studio, but also has a private practice. And she's like, was not using software. And I was like, you're just texting people constantly. Like, no wonders you're bogged down. It's like you're running a studio. You've got 3 teenage kids. Like, you do not have time to be doing texts back and forth about like, I'm available Thursday at 2, 2:30 or 3. Which one do you want? Send that to 3 people. They get booked. And then you have to send new times to somebody. I was like, that is a headache. Actually, her pushback though, which could be interesting to talk about, was that she's not very techie. And so the time kind of felt worth it to her because then she'd have to spend the time like learning a new software. And I was like, yeah, but you just have to learn the software once. We can set it up. I can teach you how to use it. And then after that, it's like, you're just good to go. You don't have to do any of this again. I'm curious kind of like your thoughts around people, because especially I think this is like a lot of yoga teachers, people who are like, I'm not techie, like I can't use software. I'd rather just like do pen and paper or text all my clients type thing.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, this is like who we've made the software for. So people, who've never created a website before, never used a scheduling tool before. We've really tried to make it as easy as possible and purpose building it for folks like that. So, we love to like say, hey, give us a try. If that's how you feel and you feel like, I'm not tech savvy. Like, one of the reasons why we try to have really good support, on our pro plan, we have office hours where you can show up, and get live help in a small group, whoever shows up to office hours. And usually like hardly anybody shows up. So you can get one-on-one help generally. And really trying to like provide those things. We provide on-demand courses and videos and tutorials to help get you started. So yeah, I mean, we have that demographic in mind for sure. And we have the resources and the services like because of that. So, but it is a thing. I mean, it can be scary, to like set this up and, being someone who's is a little bit tech challenged. It can be intimidating for sure. And, it can be, and even if it's not that way, like just being a business owner, it's like, as you grow, you start to like, just these more tasks to start coming onto your plate. And before you can almost like not realize it. And then before you know it, you're just like swimming in all these like endless tasks. And you're like, wait, how did this happen? And sometimes you have to like, I feel like I have to audit my time every once in a while and be like, gosh, I feel like I didn't get anything done today. Like I have those days where it's just like, I felt like I was just running around doing all these little tasks. And I feel like I need to audit my time to see like, what am I doing? Like what's happening for me? What's going on? Like, do I need to think about ways I can offload some of this work or, time block or, make my time spend my time more efficiently. So I think it's good to think about those things as like a teacher, a studio manager, like where am I spending my time and where could I like not spend that time and spend it in a more important way. So I think it's good to like take a step back and think about those things every once in a while because it's easy to get stuck in your business and just be like running on this treadmill. And the treadmill just keeps on going like faster and faster. And you're just like, well, I just got to keep on going. But it's good to kind of like take a break and think about like what's going on right now and what can I do to like make this a little better for myself.
Yeah, 100%. I love that. I actually just did that in my business and actually like my life too. The person I hired to help me, I was like, I really need to like audit my personal life as well because I'm with my daughter quite a bit. So it's kind of like running a business, working part-time and then mothering for the rest of time. And it's like, it's not, my business is actually pretty organized because I feel like I've got control over it. It's like, I need to figure out how to balance the two. And I feel like it's such a valuable thing to do. I feel like every quarter it's really nice to do like a seasonal kind of time audit and just look at like where you're spending your time, where you could be spending your time. I also like to think about like, so say a software costs you like $30, like, that's like probably less than one yoga class per week, right? Like if you purchased this thing or cleared up, this space in your schedule, like could you take on one class? Because even if you had one class per month, that's going to pay it off, right? So it can be like really worthwhile to invest in that way. And I feel like considering like what you could do with that time if you had it, what type of revenue could you bring into your business is probably more than like whatever you're going to invest in. If it's somebody an hour a week or software or something like that. Yeah, I think it's so important. I feel like every like season of life, there's like changes that come at us and we need to like re-explore this and look at it and see what's working and what's not.
Yeah, no, that's a great way of thinking about it because I would imagine like a lot of people would rather teach one extra class than like deal with a bunch of menial tasks that they don't really want to do. So yeah, it's a great way of thinking about it.
Yeah, for sure. I feel like sometimes you got to frame that like, could we bring in more money for like the money that's going out? I also like to think about those things as tax write-offs as well. I feel like that's always helpful too.
Absolutely. Yeah. It is a tax deduction. So that it feels good. It makes you feel a little less guilty because sometimes the guilt does creep into those things, right? You're like, oh, I don't know. You feel like you're like treating yourself to this thing that you don't really need. And, you could be fine without it. And, but it's more of like, could you be more effective and is it actually holding you back a little bit? It's a good thing to think about.
Yeah, for sure. I actually remember when I hired my assistant and, I love my dad to death, but he's like a little bit of like a blunt person sometimes and also kind of doesn't really understand like running a business online because it's just not the era he grew up in. But he was like, why do you need an assistant? Like, what do you like? Do you even do enough to like need an assistant? And I was like, okay, I'm just like letting this comment slide off me because that makes me feel frustrated and angry, but just letting that go. And then like, I'm like, well, I don't need to justify to anyone why hire somebody, but I'm like, that's kind of like an old school way of thinking. Like, why would I not want to free up like 5 hours of my time if I can afford to do so? Because then I can like work on growing things. And then I don't have to be working till like 9 p.m., 10 p.m. on my weekends, stuff like that. But I think sometimes we can feel that ourselves. I didn't necessarily feel that it was an external person who kind of put that feeling on me, but sometimes we can feel that like guilt for investing in our businesses. And so I think that's where sometimes for me thinking about like, well, if I pay for this, what can I bring in this in lieu of this like time I'm opening up can be really helpful. So maybe that's helpful for somebody listening too.
Yeah, absolutely.
As a cranky dad or maybe a cranky inner critic. One of the two. I'm curious. We've talked a little bit about this already, but do you have any like big business lessons that you want to share with listeners that you've learned through your career, Eddie? Like anything we haven't touched on?
Yeah, I mean, I think I touched on it earlier, but I do think that how you spend your time is the thing that always keeps coming back to me. And I do feel like it is one of the most important things as a business owner or, anybody who's like working a job or, but particularly I think when you're out on your own, because as I mentioned, like you feel like you could be doing so many things and there's just not enough time in the day and you want to have some work-life balance, but really it's like being able to focus on the areas that are most important. And part of that is like a lot of that, most of that is saying no to things. I think like Warren Buffett is like a huge proponent of this, but what you say no to is the most important decisions I think as a business owner that you make, because you really need to stay focused and you can't do everything. I mean, as the CEO of OfferingTree, there's so many things that I would like to chase down and try. But I know that if we do that, it's sort of like the same concept of niching down, like trying to do everything, you end up doing nothing. So really picking like what it is that you really want to be good at and excel at, and just doing that is going to provide like 10 times the results of trying to do 5 things, but doing them 1/5 of what they should be. So really, I think focus is like maybe the theme of what I think is like the most important business takeaway that I've had as an entrepreneur.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that. I think that's a huge like tip and lesson. I feel like that's been like really impactful in my business too. And I think sometimes we can get like, I don't know, a bit of that like squirrel mind where it's like we just want to do like all the things all the time. And I feel like for me, this was a big learning too, where like, especially as I was growing and trying to get my name out there, it was like just saying yes to everything, like free, paid, whatever. Like if I had capacity to do it and it was within like my realm of expertise, like it was a yes. And I feel like now I apply more of like, if it's not a hell yes, it's a no. And that's just the chapter I'm at in my business, like, and in my life. I have a toddler and my business is already busy. So it's like, I just don't have capacity to say yes to like every little thing that comes along. But I love thinking about how like saying no can be like one of the most like powerful things we can do. And especially if it's not relevant to you and your business and your goals. Like, I think that there's a time and a place for offering free stuff and for giving back to your community and stuff. But it's like, is this pushing you forward in your business? Is it helping you in some way? And I think it's really important to be a little bit selfish and also be honest about those types of things for ourselves.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's one of the things that, I mean, you mentioned it, like when you're first starting out, you feel like you can say yes to everything. It's one of those things that I wish I knew, like when I first started, that I needed to do that more, because I think, it would have allowed us to move so much faster of just not trying to do so many different things and just kind of focus on a few at a time and really excel at those things. Because when you're first starting out, you feel like, well, I got all this time. I haven't really done much yet. I'm just starting. Plus on top of that, like I have these goals and I need to really like move towards those. And I haven't had that much momentum yet. And I haven't had that much success yet to build on. And you really feel like you need to give it like 100% and 360 degrees. And really, you sort of like do yourself a disservice instead of just focusing, saying no, and being patient. And like that patience will pay off in the future. I think like that beginner mindset of like needing to do everything all at once is a little bit of counterintuitive and like detrimental.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's hard to get out of it too. Like, I think for me, like, I don't necessarily regret some of the early things that I said yes to, but I think I was saying yes to things like way too long. Like, I think it basically took being like pregnant, maternity leave, having a baby for me to really be like, I need to be really specific about what I'm saying yes and no to. And, I had a lot more time like prior to having a child, but it's like time is valuable, right? So it's like every little thing I said yes to, if it's not like moving me forward or benefiting me in some way, it's like, it's just taking up my time. And I think sometimes it can be scary to say no, because then we can start like reeling and like, but what if this is like the next like person who wants to hire me? Or like, what if this is like, so-and-so, or what if this like, I get a client out of this, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, we just really need to be streamlined and focused, I think. So I really love that tip, because that's definitely something I've struggled with over the years.
Totally. That's a great point of like the fact that you have all these things that you want to improve. And you think that like, if I only did this one more thing, it might solve this. It's really hard to like push back against that. It is really tough. So I guess we wouldn't be talking about it if it was easy, right? Like it is one of the toughest things, and it almost takes the school of hard knocks to really like have it sink in. So.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that you brought that up though. I feel like that's a great business lesson. And I'm curious if you can tell us, what's next for OfferingTree. What are you guys working on? What's kind of coming next in the next couple of months in Q4 and into Q1 of 2024?
Yeah. So, we just released the ability to track information on your clients, like extra information the system doesn't already track, like custom things. Like if you want to track birthdays or emergency contact information, things like that, you can enter those things and have folks fill out that information when they sign up for classes or purchase a membership, purchase a package, or purchase a course or watch a video of yours. So that's new. The big thing that we're working on in the future is automations and automated workflows. So, if someone does a particular action or thing, that can trigger an automation to either like send emails or create. We're going to be adding soon the ability to like create tasks or send text messages. So think of like things like someone just buys a package or someone comes to class for the first time or something like that happens, or there's like a failed payment or something on a membership. You can then like kick off this sequence of events that happen based on that. So you could send people like email sequences, text sequences. You can create like a task for yourself to be like, hey, I need to follow up with so-and-so because this happened. So it's going to be a really powerful feature. And we're really excited to see like, it's kind of like the page builder where you release these like tools and then it's really fun to see like what people build with the tools that you provide them. So we're just beta testing this now. So, but by the time that this episode's released, it should be out there. We're really looking forward to it, and it'll be pretty exciting. And we have like enhancements and improvements that we want to build onto this, like the ability to like create your own forms. And then when someone submits a form for something, like it could be like a wait list, or maybe you're trying to get feedback for a new offering, or something where you want your clients to fill out a form that can then trigger off like these workflows as well. So,
oh, that's cool. Because people can already use like Zapier to do that type of stuff because you guys have like Zapier integration, but this will be able to like do it right in the software.
Yes, absolutely. So it's kind of like, we're really trying to build like an all-in-one thing to make it like really easy and simple. So, I think for that like person who's maybe a little bit intimidated by tech, like you say Zapier and integrations, and they're just like, okay, I'm out.
Yeah,
like,
that's not like everyday yoga teacher lingo, is it?
Right. Yeah. You're like, okay, I'm done. So anyway, so we can do all this like within OfferingTree, and so you don't have to do like Zapier and then use like something like ConvertKit or ActiveCampaign or MailChimp or something like that to like do these like sequences. And what'll be cool is it'll be so much more powerful because, it's all within the OfferingTree platform. So we know of like things like package purchases and like when the packages expire, or, how many times that package was used. And you can like use that information within the workflow to be like more personalized and contextual based on like, so if you're like someone buys an intro package and they haven't used it yet, you can send them a different email than someone who's like used up all the package credits in the first like week, because those are two different types of people. So, it'll be like very powerful that the automations like have that contextual information within the platform.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. That sounds like a really cool update. I love that.
Yeah. So that's the big one, but we have plenty of other updates. We're continuing to build more widgets for the page builder and templates and things like that, because, we're always hearing that like people want, more varieties of ways they can make their websites look different. And so we're always looking to improve that as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's been one of like the coolest things I think for me to see like with OfferingTree's development over the years was like, I feel like it started as like a very simple landing page. They basically like kind of looked the same with obviously like your unique information and colors and stuff like that. But now it's like you can really build out a simple website. And I think you guys have done a really great job at like keeping it easy to use while giving people like more variety and stuff like that. So that's like one of my favorite things that you guys have done.
Yeah. And we're constantly like making just like small enhancements to, the package and membership functionality, the appointment functionality, scheduling, and just allowing a little bit more options and for folks as we like have more conversations with customers. So, but it's always a balance of like making sure that we keep it really easy to use and very flexible, because I think like some softwares, it's really easy to be like, we need to provide every single option for every single person. And then before you know it, it's like, holy cow, like I don't know how to set this up. It's way too complicated. So we're really trying to strike that balance and be thoughtful about that.
Yeah, no, that's great. I feel like that's probably tricky, especially as like a software developer when you know how all these things work. But great to keep your ideal audience and stuff in mind. So I love that. Is there anything else you want to share with listeners today before we wrap up, Eddie?
I would say that I would say another update that's coming like in the future is we're going to be releasing an app. So that's not going to be happening. Yeah, so that we're pretty excited about that. I mean, I would say like all of our UIs, like all of our views and stuff are very like mobile friendly. So everything looks great on a mobile phone as well. The founding team was actually mobile software developers in their lifetime. So mobile is near and dear to our heart. So we want to make sure that like everything looks great on mobile. But we have heard time and time again that we should have an app, and we're like kind of like the cobbler with no shoes as mobile app developers not having an app. So we're chomping at the bit to get started on that. So look for that sometime in 2024. But we're really excited about that. And I would just say that we're really happy to support your podcast, and it's been great to get to know you. And if there's anything that your listeners want, feel free to send them our way.
Yeah, of course. Listeners, if there's anything you want, go OfferingTree's way, or send me an email and I can pass it on. But yes, it's my pleasure to continue working with you guys. And like I've said, it's been amazing to just see the growth and development over the last couple of years. And on that note, where's a good place to find you, Eddie? Where's a good place to connect with OfferingTree? All that good stuff.
Yeah, I mean, our website is www.offeringtree.com. You can go to /MBOM and you'll get a discount if you go to that link. And I'm sure we can put that in the show notes. And then if you ever just want to reach out, I would say hello@offeringtree.com just to send us an email. We have live chat on our website. So if you go to that link, you can chat with our team and ask any questions that you want. And then if you are a customer of OfferingTree, feel free to reach out at support@offeringtree.com for any questions that you have about setting up the site or issues that you're having. We always love to help people. So those are the best ways. I should say we also have a Facebook community. So if you are a user of OfferingTree, we have a great Facebook community with hundreds of people in there. And it's like free game to ask any questions that you have about using OfferingTree. And people even talk about like, what they're doing in their business. I think it's a huge benefit for users to have a peer community to kind of bounce ideas off of. So that's also a huge value. And then, we do have a lot of webinars and educational opportunities as well. If you go to offeringtree.com/webinars, you'll see, webinars that are coming up, and we have a blog. So, there's we like to provide as much educational resources to our community as possible to make sure that they have like all the tools that they need to be successful.
Yeah, for sure. I'm glad that you brought those things up, because I think that those are both huge resources. And I think even anyone who's like interested in OfferingTree, but if you're not sure if it's for you, check out a webinar. They're on topics that are not just OfferingTree related, like lots of just yoga business topics. And then also I think, do the free trial and like join the Facebook community. And that's, I feel like, such a great way to just see like how people are using the software, get any questions answered that you have to see if it's like a good fit for you. I think it's so important when you're finding software to make sure that it like works for you and your business. And that's a great place to do that. But yeah, we'll make sure there's links to all of that stuff in the show notes. So thank you for bringing that stuff up.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for having me on. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah. Thank you for being here. It's been really great to catch up with you. All right, my friends, I hope that you enjoyed that episode of the podcast with Eddie Arpin. Definitely make sure you go check out OfferingTree. And like he mentioned, we've got a little discount for you. You can head on over to offeringtree.com/MBOM to check that out. If you have any questions about OfferingTree, make sure you reach out to Eddie or myself. Always happy to answer your questions. And a big thank you for listening to the podcast, for sharing with your friends and other fellow yoga teachers. I couldn't do it without you guys. So thank you so much, and I will see you next week. Thank you so much for tuning in for this episode of the podcast. To find links, notes, resources, and everything mentioned in today and all episodes of the show, you can head on over to mbomyoga.com. You can find the podcast and myself on Facebook and social media at Mastering the Business of Yoga. And I would love for you to join the private Facebook community, Yoga Business Badasses. If you have any questions, comments, or feedback, please make sure you reach out to me at info@mbomyoga.com. And last of all, if you enjoyed this episode of the show, please make sure you hit subscribe and leave a review for the podcast. It would mean the world. Thanks so much for listening, and I'll see you next week. Namaste.